Right, so general election candidacies have been finalised as the nominations period ended this week, but not before yet another member of Labour's National Executive Committee have seemingly handed themselves a safe seat. Let's face it, these people are not properly scrutinising themselves. They are simply taking the biggest slices of cake, the tastiest portions, safe Labour seats for their own ends. Starmerroids, helping themselves as rewards for services rendered. So far, the chair of the National Executive Committee has taken a seat. There's Luke Akehurst, of course, the best known and most notorious example, along with another equally as bad in Gurinder Singh-Josan. There's a couple of trade unionists from the right-wing-led trade unions round out the NEC reps taking safe seats, 5 of them, but others getting the nod, no less disgraceful, and showing what a stitch-up matters have been, include no less than a former staffer of Starmer himself. It isn't necessarily going well for them as a result amongst the people they hope to represent, who downright resent these people parachuting themselves in. So will things go down any better for the latest executive member jumping on that gravy train, a 6th member of the NEC, especially with a background of proven bullying allegations against her? But I suppose the question there is that seen as a high-quality characteristic for an MP in Starmer's Labour these days? Right, so have the people of Barking not suffered enough? They've had Margaret Hodge as their MP for over 30 years, imposed on them as she was, and with all the baggage that she brought with her, not to mention her ardent support for Labour Friends of Israel, and all despite not living in the area and never having had, as far as I'm aware, coming from North Islington as she did, famously losing out on that seat in 1983 to a certain Jeremy Corbyn. Yet now the very much taken for granted people of Barking have had someone else imposed on them, no less right-wing, nor from the area, parachuting in, this time coming from Enfield in North London, the Labour Council leader there and one of the 2 Labour councillors appointed to the Labour NEC, Nesal Calaskin. This is she with former Labour Friends of Israel chair Joan Ryan lurking behind her, the former MP for Enfield North, now the chief executive of Elnet UK, another vehicle similar to Luke Akehurst's We Believe in Israel, lobbying on behalf of Israel to promote their interests in Britain. Her family is apparently quite close to Calaskin's. Now, on the face of it, and indeed if you've seen my other videos on Labour in positions going into this general election, you might notice that Calaskin is not white, bucking the trend somewhat in what we've seen from Labour selections under Starmer so far, disproportionately seeing deselections happening amongst ethnic minority candidates. Yet, here he is imposing one. Well, all will become clear presently on that score, I think, as we dig into her previous actions. Enfield has gone through something of a right-wing purge, even before Keir Starmer became Labour leader, because as we've now become accustomed to since Keir Starmer took over, it's what the Labour right-wing does. Calaskin in 2018 was the local campaign forum secretary in Enfield. LCFs coordinate constituency Labour Party activities within their given areas, their patches, and they do so with a view of securing the re-election of local councillors ahead of the next set of local elections that's happening. But Calaskin appeared to have a different set of ideas or motivations, because ahead of that same year's local elections, some very suspect and irregular vetting of councillor candidates went on. Proper assessment wasn't carried out. For example, one candidate that got passed reportedly had a very serious lack of communication ability, not great for someone required to speak in public, but then that didn't appear to be the aim, as shortly after these people were installed, they promptly voted Calaskin in as the council leader. Labour held as the council is. Not only that, but in a borough where 1 in 5 people are black, every single black Labour councillor ended up deselected to make room for these erstwhile Calaskin minions, it seemed, though not exclusively so. Such was the blatant discrimination against black candidates, though, that one former councillor and one of the candidates for that election resigned in protest over it. The councillor in question having been won for 12 years by that point, and they said on this matter, "In my 12 years as a councillor, I've never seen anything like this. It's unprecedented. The black councillors were largely in safe seats, but those who stayed on to fight, reluctantly, were given unwinnable Tory seats. The safe seats went to people who had been planning this for some time, and a lot of them were from one particular community, the people who benefited from the whole debacle of the compilation and selection process. One particular community at the expense of blacks, those from Calaskin's own racial background, she's of Cypriot descent, which could be Greek or Turkish Cypriot, And that allegation of one community ousting another was borne out by the fact black candidates were ousted and Turkish candidates imposed, amounting to what was called an ethnic coup at the time. The then deputy leader of the council stepped down from his role ahead of this being confirmed, not prepared to serve in Caliskin's cabinet, the most inexperienced in Enfield's history as it was called at the time, and responsible for a budget in the region of some £1 billion. This coup triggered complaints to the governance and legal unit of the Labour Party following the election, and Caliskin taken over as leader, but by the November, a full motion of no confidence was called against her after refusing to answer questions concerning her role in those selections as the LCF secretary, those imposed, and those who were effectively removed to make way for them, breaching standing orders pertaining to who got nominated and selected as leader and to the various cabinet positions. The motion demanded Caliskin's resignation, and the motion passed with just 4 votes against it, but being non-binding made not the slightest jot of a difference. The council, off the back of this, ended up being placed in special measures. Labour's then National Executive Committee rebuked Caliskin for ignoring instructions they made to her by this point. It was a complete mess, driven seemingly by one woman's massive ambition and little else. The bullying allegations came to a head, however, the following year in 2019, where an allegation made against Caliskin by another female councillor, which had found against Caliskin, ended up being upheld after she tried to then appeal it. Evidence was given at the appeal by the Chief Monitoring Officer, who Caliskin had accused of bias and political motivation, which by now, as I'm sure you can appreciate, might be a little bit rich coming from her. The Conduct Committee overseeing the appeal sided with the council, said they'd done everything by the book and that Caliskin was a bully, had bullied this other councillor and was instructed to undertake mediation, send a written apology to that councillor, which must be text approved by that same Chief Monitoring Officer, hardly inclined at this point to cut her any slack over that. A statement issued at the next full council meeting in light of it, and acknowledged that her actions were out of order. Failure to comply would result in all of this being published in the local paper and on the council website. Did she do it? Yes, but then went on to complain about the cost of it all to the public. Well, she's the one who chose to appeal and was still found back to rights. Some £11,000 charged to the public purse to only have her told she was still a bully. And her week hadn't even finished there either. She then breached standards again by trying to get a meeting arranged with the chair of the council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee, those that get the fine-tooth comb out to go through council motions and decisions looking for flaws. It's an independent process. She was asking for regular meetings with the chair, though, so that he would be more closely aligned to key decisions. Well, she was accused of trying to exert undue influence and to pack it in. She was told her email was inappropriate, compromising and incriminating, to which her response was to just email again for the same request. This resulted in the monitoring officer getting involved again, after receiving a formal complaint from said chair by this point. The track record then, it would appear, of being a bully, an inexperienced and overly ambitious individual who doesn't wish to be held accountable for her actions, and who, despite all of this, has remained council leader, and in fact got elected to the Labour Party National Executive Committee as one of the 2 councillor reps in the meantime, which has now paved the way for her apparently limitless ambition to now become an MP, an individual even as awful as Margaret Hodge, having left a more than 15,000 seat majority in Barking, a seat that's been solidly Labour since 1945 and is being taken for granted again over that fact more than ever now. Meanwhile, her equally parachuted in NEC counterpart Luke Akehurst's campaign goes from bad to worse as more of his old comments come to light, despite him desperately trying to delete anything of note, undermining any semblance of Labour only imposing high-quality candidates when they come out with stuff such as the nonsense outlined in this video recommendation here. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.